In the judicial system of the United States, constitutional base offenses are considered especially reprehensible. In New York, the dedicated detectives who investigate these felonies are members of an elite squad known as the Supreme Court. This is one of their stories. In 1787, a man by the name of John Finch created an innovative new mode of transportation, the steamboat. Little did he know that this invention would cause a great conflict that would eventually be brought into the Supreme Court. In 1824, a groundbreaking judicial ruling would form the foundation for regulating commerce as we know it today. Following their boat's successful navigation of the Hudson River, the state of New York issued a long-term license to Robert Livingston and Robert Fulton, granting them the sole privilege of operating steam-powered ships in New York for 30 years. Aaron Ogden struck a deal with Livingston and was given a license to operate steamboats on the Hudson between the states of New York and New Jersey. Meanwhile, Thomas Gibbons justified the transportation of passengers via steamboat from Elizabethtown, New Jersey to New York City through the 1793 Coastal Licensing Act. Eventually, Ogden filed a claim with the court demanding an injunction against Gibbons, claiming that he had the sole right to the operation of steamboats in New York due to his state license. Meanwhile, Gibbons appealed to this action inside the 1793 Coastal Licensing Act. Little did Gibbons know his plans would eventually backfire on him, sending his business plunging into the water.
All rise. Supreme Court is now in session. Judge Marshall presiding. Please be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Calling the case of People of the State of New York versus Thomas Gibbons. Court is now in session.
Your Honor and ladies and gentlemen of the court, the defendant has been charged with the crime of operating steamboats in the same waters without the authority of Fulton and Livingston. The evidence will show that Gibbons is guilty of using chartered area without permission of the state of New York. The evidence I present will prove to you that the defendant is guilty as charged.
Your Honor, I beg to defer from Mr. Gibbons. I was personally given the right by thee, Mr. Robert Livingston, and the state of New York to have the sole right of operating steamboats in the state. I challenge Mr. Gibbons' reference to the 1793 Coastal Licensing Act. As stated in the 10th Amendment, which was established prior to this act, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. As it is apparent that there is no declaration of the federal government's power to regulate interstate trade, I declare Mr. Gibbons' argument invalid. Additionally, New York's regulation of commerce in no way interferes with the federal government's regulation of commerce, as these powers are concurrent between the state and the country.
Your Honor, Judge Marshall of the Supreme Court, under the law, my client is presumed innocent until proven guilty. During this trial, you will hear no real evidence against my client. You will come to know the truth that Thomas Gibson was just running his business of a steamboat service just like any other businessman would, which he is now being sued by Mr. Ogden due to the great state of New York, in which only gave Livingston and others the right to use the waterway, which is a violation due to the United States Constitution under Section 8, Article 1, which states that the Congress has the right to regulate interstate commerce, not the state, which is written in the American Constitution. This is the law of our land.
The Honorable Judge Marshall, under the law I have been presumed guilty of trespassing water without a permit to operate a steamboat as my business, which includes into a constitutional offense.
Mr. Livingston, how were you able to operate in the Hudson River?
The state State of New York granted me all rights to operate and license all vessels through a long-term contract.
Did you or did you not give permission to Ogden in order to operate the steamboats on the Hudson River in New York?
Yes, I did give permission to Ogden to operate the steamboat on the Hudson by giving him a license that permitted him to operate his business.
No further questions. Representative of New York, did you give the charter to Livingston?
Yes, we did give permission to Livingston to operate his steamboat on the Hudson River in New York.
And exactly what does the charter permit and include?
It gives the rights to operate on the route pursuant to the 1793 Act of Congress regulating coastal commerce.
Your Honor, Judge Marshall, would you really go against our country's own constitution that was fought for by the blood of our founding fathers, or would you rather believe in the Constitution that was written in order to guide our country? My client, Thomas Gibson, has been wrongly accused of such accusation that there is no need for this case to go on.
Your Honor, the State of New York has given my client a grant to officially operate his vessels on the route between Elizabethtown and New York City. The disregard of this charter by Gibbons shouldn't be acceptable, as my client was given an official charter for the area. I hope that you justices will see that Gibbons was wrongfully, under the law, been patrolling these waters.
Thank you for your statements. Plaintiff, defendants, any more statements?
Your Honorable Judge Marshall, Congress had exclusive national power over interstate commerce according to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and that to argue otherwise would result in confusing and contradictory local regulatory policies. I, Thomas Gibbons, claim that if this is ruled in Ogden's favor, then this will act against me and also be an act against the supreme law of the land.
The people of the States of New York versus Thomas Gibbons on the count of accusation of constitutional offense, we find Gibbons not guilty. The U.S. Supreme Court rules in favor of Gibbons. Judge Marshall rules for Gibbons with the reasoning of the holding that New York's exclusive grant to Ogden violated the Federal Licensing Act of 1793.
The State of New York thanks you for your contributions. Court is now adjourned.